Hi everyone, welcome back to Stocks All Day with Dr. O'Day. This is my $1,000 journey, and this is the end of my kind of multi-part video series kind of explaining the different indicators that I use when making trades. And in this video I'm going to show, okay, so when I bring all of this together, what makes me buy a stock? How do I pick my target risk? And how do I pick my target profit as a way to set my stop losses as well as knowing where exactly I'm going to try to sell this stock for. So with that, I hope you learned something from this video. As always, please make sure you realize that this is just how I pick and choose stocks. This is not investment advice and is not meant to be investment advice. Please invest at your own risk. And as always, make sure to hit that like and subscribe to support the channel. I really appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. So as of right now, I don't have any money in cash of my account that I'm trading with, but I just want to talk about a trade that I would make on Monday if I did have a little bit of cash in the account. And so what I'm looking for here, so again, I'm working with a number of kind of small strategies that kind of accumulate, and I've been working and refining this set of strategies over time. The particular stock I'm looking at today is AMD. And so what we see here is that if we're looking at the levels of support, we see that AMD tends to have rebounded, and we see this a few different times that it's tested this level of support now 4 different times on the daily chart. So that seems to me like that's going to be a pretty strong level of support for us, and it's going to be, pretty good for us moving forward. Now, we did dip below the 200-day exponential moving average, and I don't love that, but we do see that the stock is entirely, like the last day is entirely above that, so I'm going to go ahead and be fine with that. We see that the MACD just crossed over here, and it does look like the stock is trending upward. What I would hope to kind of confirm that is that in the next couple days after, purchasing this stock, I would hope that we would break through the 50-day exponential moving average, the 50-day moving average, and also this line of resistance. Now, that's a lot of what ifs, and this isn't, to me, this isn't an absolute winner, but I would buy this stock. Because there's a lot of potential upside to AMD here. And once we are able to get through that, and we're going to know pretty quickly if we're going to be able to get through that. If we look at the analyst price targets, they're rating AMD. Some people are putting it as low as 17, but some people are putting it as high as 161 with an average of 103. That is a lot of room for movement from the current price. That's a 20% increase is what people are expecting in the next year. And AMD is a stock that I think could really boom, but it could also bust. And we got to keep that in mind. We're not going to win with every trade, but when we lose, we have to limit our losses. So for me, once I'm getting ready to buy into a stock, this is what I do. I come over here to the left side where we see a long position. I'm going to choose long position. And so I'm going to say, okay, here's where my price is at this moment. And I've told you a number of times in the other videos that I enter trades with a reward to risk ratio of 1.5 to 1. So first I need to decide, okay, where am I going to set my stop loss? Well, for sure I want to be below this green line right here because, first off, I want to be below the 200-day exponential because that could be a line of support that could kind of help out this stock. I also want to be below the most recent kind of swing lows, so that's going to be, here. I also want to be below this great line of support there that we've drawn in. And so at a bare minimum, I kind of want to set myself below all of this stuff. Now, I'm going to give myself a little wiggle room here. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'd set my stop loss somewhere around 11%. I'd probably just go ahead and set it at $72 even. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and set that stop loss. Now I need to figure out what my target profit is going to be so that I have a 1.5 to 1 reward to risk ratio. So I'm going to increase this up to 1.5. somewhere around there. So I'm looking at a target profit of $95.78, which would be a gain of 18%. Now that's asking a lot out of AMD. Again, I'm not fully sure that I, would actually invest in this particular stock right now. This is a fairly wide risk thing that's happening right now. Now let me tell you, let's talk for a second about how we mitigate our risk, because this is huge. So right now in my particular trading, I am operating with about $3,800 in cash right now. So 3,800. Actually, I shouldn't say in cash. About $2,000 of that is leveraged money. So I'm actually operating on margin right now. So I've got about 1850 in cash, and I'm operating with $2,000 of money borrowed. So what I'm going to do here is I've got $3,800. Well, on any given trade, I've decided I do not want to risk more than 1%. So I'm going to take 3,800 times 0.01. And that means that on any given trade, my maximum risk is $38. So now I come back to my stock here, and the risk here is 12%. That's a pretty steep risk on a given stock. That means I'm not going to put as much money into this one. And so what I would do is I would do equals 38 divided by 0.12. That's 12%. That's going to give me a value of $316. So at a maximum risk with this particular stock, I'm going to risk $316.67. So if we come back here, that means that I can buy, so the current price is 81.09, so I'm going to do equals 316 divided by 81.09. So that means I'm going to buy about 4 shares. I would probably go ahead and buy 4 shares in this case. But actually what I do is I don't do 316. No. So what I do is I say, okay, what's 316 divided by 2? That's 158 bucks. So this is going to be my initial investment. $158.33. So if the price of my stock is $81.09 and I'm going to have my initial investment of 158, well, that means I'm buying 2 shares. So what I'm going to do is initially I'm going to buy 2 shares. Then what I'm going to say is I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to say, okay, if I stop out, it's going to be a 12% loss. Well, what happens if it drops 6% or half of that? Or what happens if it drops a third of that? And so what I actually do is I figure out this distance a third of the way between the current price and my stop loss. I figure out that distance, and I actually have this automated here in my stock trading. So what I've done, and this is real recent that I've added this in, this is very important though to mitigate our risk. And I've gotten much better at mitigating our risk. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and say AMD here. And I'm going to do this on Monday, which is 4-5. So 4-5-21. I'm going to go ahead and buy in at a price of 81.05 was the price of my stock. I'm going to go ahead and buy 3 shares because that was that kind of 243, or actually I'm going to buy 2 shares was what we decided on. So that's going to be a $162 investment, which is very close to my initial investment target of 158. And again, I'm just rounding here to the nearest whole number. Well, my risk percentage was 12%. So what I do, and remember the cost of my stock when I bought it initially was 81.05. This is taking that value times 1 minus this risk divided by 3. So it's actually finding a third of the way between there, and it's going to tell me, okay, if the stock drops to 77.81, maybe I want to buy a little bit more of that stock. And then this one, if it drops another third, maybe I want to buy a little bit more of that stock. So let's come back and let's say, okay, why do I want to buy more at that point? Well, we said if the stock drops to $77 here, let's actually get close to the exact amount. 77.81 here. So if the stock drops to 77.81, that's going to be close enough, and then I'm going to put a stop loss right there. Now I'm going to put my target profit at this same amount. What we see now is this stock that I had enough confidence in to put money in it when it was here. Now the stock has dropped down to here. Well, if I buy a little bit more, I now have a risk to reward ratio of 2.71. Things are looking pretty darn good. Now, let's say it drops another 1%. And I said, okay, what if it drops down to 74.57? So we're going to go ahead and put another one around there. We're going to put a similar stop loss, and then I'm going to do a similar target profit. Now all of a sudden my reward to risk ratio is 6.39. And what happens is a lot of times before going up, the stock does kind of peter around in this area, and then hopefully it eventually goes up. So what I'm doing is I'm taking advantage of that happening. If the stock drops some, I buy a little bit more. It drops more, I buy a little bit more, but I keep my stop loss. And so this actually helps me to get even better reward to risk ratios. Now that being said, probably the closer we get to the stop loss, the higher the likelihood it's going to stop out, all of those types of things. But what I do is right here, I buy with about half of the total risk. Here I buy in a little bit more. Here I might buy in a little bit more. What's actually ended up happening is I typically buy in, so we said, okay, here I'm going to buy in typically with the other 158, so I might buy 2 more shares after it drops a third. I usually don't put more money in after it drops 2/3 just because that rarely happens for one, and I want to be in it as more than I'm not in it. So typically I just put the other half of my money in when it drops down to this first third. And so for me, this is a way that I've learned to actually minimize my risk and to maximize my reward. And this is something that I just added into my strategy. It's something that I am super excited about. Now let's talk about how to actually do that in the course of a trade. So again, I'm saying I want to buy here. If it drops to here, I want to sell. If it goes up to here, I also want to sell. And if it drops down to here, I want to buy some more. Then I want to sell here again. I want to, I want to sell up here again. And I just found this software. It's probably ridiculous that I didn't know about it, but Thinkorswim. I've been trading with TD Ameritrade for a little bit now, and that's where I'm going to move all of my money over into there because TD Ameritrade is awesome, and Thinkorswim is an add-on that TD Ameritrade has, and it's amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in AMD here. And by the way, I say Thinkorswim is amazing. I actually think that the online version of this, the PC version of this, is actually kind of terrible. It's not very user friendly, but the phone app version is actually much more user friendly. So I'm going to come in here to buy, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to buy 2 shares because that was what we had decided. And I'm going to set I'm going to do a limit buy of 81.05 was what we were saying. So I'm going to do a limit buy. If it doesn't buy, who cares? There's always another trade. But I do a limit buy, I say good till canceled. So it's going to say if the price opens or goes below 81.05, I'm going to go ahead and buy that. Well, now I'm going to do a contingency. So now it's saying, okay, first triggers all. So once this one buys, then it's going to trigger these other things. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to sell here. And I want to do OR here. I want to sell there too. So I'm going to do a sell, and I'm going to put a stop order in. So if my price drops, what did we say, to 71.36-ish? So if the price drops to 71.36, then it's going to instigate a stop order. Or if the price goes up to 95.90, So I'm going to put 95.90 here. I'm going to do a limit sell. 95.90. So what this trade is telling me is that if if I get 2 shares for 81.05 on that limit buy, and that's saying that that's the maximum I'm going to pay for that. And you can set that whatever you want. You could also do a market order. I tend to use limit buys though. It tends to, I get it for a little bit better price. So if this happens, then it's going to trigger these to open up. And which one, this OCO that says order cancels order. So if it stops out, then it also cancels this limit sell. If it does the limit sell, it cancels the stop loss. So what's going to happen here is this first one triggers, then one of those two is going to eventually happen. So I review this order. I could eventually then kind of send that order in. I'm not going to go ahead and send that order though because I don't have any cash in the account right now. It's all tied up in stocks right now. But what this allows me to do is now I don't have to think about this too much. I mean, yeah, I'm going to watch this stock over time, make sure it's doing what I want to. So right after I place that order, then I want to place this other order. I'm going to do it the same way. I'm going to say, okay, I want to buy an additional 2 shares at 77.88. I'm going to sell if it drops to here. Well, if it does buy, then I'm going to sell if it drops to here. If it does buy, then I'm going to sell if it goes up to here, and that order is going to cancel the bottom order as well. And again, I love Thinkorswim. They have made my life so much easier because all I got to do is I just say, so let's go ahead and hit back here. All I have to do is I say, okay, I'm going to buy DHR. So that was this one. I bought it. And then if it drops to a certain amount, it sells. If it goes up to a certain amount, it sells. So I bought DHR for 211. If it goes up to 241, I'm going to sell. If it goes down to 203, I'm going to sell. So I love, love, love having this software available. This is very recent to me, and this has just made my trading so much better. Where I can come in, I use all of these indicators together. I use the support and resistance. I use the MACD. I use all of this. And then I say, okay, I want to buy right here. If it drops to here, I want to sell. If it goes up to here, I want to sell with some profit. So hopefully over the course of this kind of multi-video period, you learned about how I use the MACD, how I use the RSI to potentially re-enter trades if I stop out, and then how I use support and resistance and also Yahoo Finance analyst estimates to actually make a decision on whether I'm going to jump into a particular trade. And then I hope it was clear on how I use Thinkorswim to actually place those trades. Again, this is something that I'm super excited about. I have been refining this strategy over the last kind of 4 months or so since I started this in November. And at this point, I've just learned so much about these different strategies, and I've kind of refined them. And what I've, read and, found out and, just kind of going through this is you're going to find the strategies that work for you. But the key is that you stick to your strategies. Find what works for you and then stay with that strategy. This works for me, and so far I am up about 86% in about 4.5 months. And I'm looking forward to the future, and I'm wanting to see how much I can turn this $1,000 into on this $1,000 journey. So thank you so much for checking in and following along with this multi-video series. If you have any questions, let me know, and as always, please hit that like and subscribe to support the channel. Have a great rest of your day.